Thank you for joining us for this discussion titled Acting Locally, Sharing Globally, the Impact of Open House Worldwide. My name is Manise Verghese and I'm the CEO of Open City, which is a charity based in London that set up the first Open House Festival back in 1992. So it's now entering its 35th year of existence, which is quite incredible to say out loud. But also is the organization that set up Open House Worldwide as a global network that now exists in 60 cities around the world. So it's really amazing, thanks to the funding from Creative Europe, that we're able to be here, a lot of us all together, for this annual summit and to discuss the impact of international collaboration and cooperation. Today's discussion is really to really think about what it means to organize a festival of architecture, how it's more than just opening up buildings and spaces, but also creating conversations for people to learn about and shape the places where they live. At a time of increasing political division and the climate crisis, finding ways to connect people and share spaces and ideas across borders is more important than ever before. And it's this kind of sense of togetherness that's maybe the future heritage, in keeping with the theme of the summit, that we are aiming to protect. So at this moment, we're trying to reflect on the last 3 years of the Open House Europe project and think about all the learnings and resources that have been developed over that time to think about how we start to shape that as we move forward, and how we extend that across the world to create a truly inclusive and global network. It's led us to reflect on the possible futures of this as a global movement, and how we can involve local people more to tackle both the challenges that lie ahead as more people move into cities, as well as creating opportunities for communities to have their voices heard. Joining me today are a panel of talented designers and thinkers who are all participating in this global endeavor and have been developing new ways to connect different constellations of cities through geography, language, and research. So to briefly introduce them in the order in which they'll be presenting, starting is Martynas, bear with me with this pronunciation, Germanavičius. He'll say it better in a minute, who's a researcher, curator, and producer working in the fields of architecture and the arts. Since 2020, he's been working at Architecturas Fondas on international projects, including Open House Europe, which is what he'll discuss today. Tadas Šarūnas is a sociologist working at Vilnius University. As part of Open House Europe, he has been analyzing the data collected across different festivals run in different European cities, and he's going to discuss the patterns and trends shaping these people and places. Next up will be Tania Davidge, an architect, design advocate, and writer, who's the executive director and chief curator at Open House Melbourne. She's going to speak about the efforts to connect festivals across Australia and New Zealand. And then Robert Newcombe is an architectural designer and the executive director of Fundación Aldea and co-founder of Open House Santiago. And he recently organized a series of online peer learning sessions for the worldwide network, including a Spanish session on fundraising, and is looking at ways we can connect cities through language and shared resources. So each of them are going to do a short presentation, and then that'll be followed by a kind of group discussion where we invite you all to think of some questions and join in. And so I'll now hand over to Martynas as our first speaker.
Thank you, Manish. Right. Yes, so Open House Europe. Some of you are part of it. Some of you might know about it because of the Open House Athens, also as a part, one of our members of Open House Europe. But the idea of this session was also to think about the cooperation between open houses. And when we started Open House Europe project 4 years ago, of course, we had this very great foundation of Open House Worldwide Network, where we already are sharing some knowledge with other organizers, but we really felt that there is a lack of kind of a means to organize activities together. So Open House Europe, born out of this necessity to really join the forces and see how together we can learn from each other and how we can look for ways of how Open House as a format can be really developed further. So I would like to very quickly guide you through what this project is about, because we're gonna have Tadas presenting more about his really deep insight from the monitoring about how we actually succeeded or failed. But just in order to refresh your memory, what we do, because sometimes our work remains invisible, I wanted to highlight that first, we are a collection of 16 open house organizers from all over Europe. Behind these organizations, there are people who meet together, and it's almost like family meetings, these annual summits over the last 3 years, where we really see how even our festivals being similar in the format of having these open guided tours, each of the festival has its own innovations and ways of dealing with some questions that can be also relevant for the others to hear out. So basically our cooperation is grounded in this knowledge exchange between different organizers. But what also really unites us, and where we already from the very beginning saw potential, was the annual theme. Annual themes, in some open houses, it was happening on its own, so it wasn't something as an invention. For others, it was a new endeavor. They had to adapt to it, and I feel like also throughout those 3 years, they gained also curatorial experiences in how the themes can be relevant and help to look at the buildings we open every year. But also it gave us a framework for a debate about our European legacy, as we say, or the future heritage. But we started in 2023 with a team of Building Futures Together, where we were looking at the questions of what is sustainable architecture and architectural practices. Last 2 years ago, we had an annual theme for accessibility and inclusion that was not only a conceptual theme, but also methods and ways of how open houses changed their operations and enabled the festivals to be experienced by different people with different needs. So there were also a lot of new ways of looking at the same old excursions. So these are some of the examples from the different cities. And of course, this year we had an annual theme for future heritage that in a way summarizes also those 3 years for us, but gives time to reflect on the legacy we leave behind us. And of course, the project probably is most visible when we are coming together for the annual summits, where we have not only a public program like today, but also where we share our knowledge between each other. So in 2023, we had an annual summit in Lisbon for discussing the Building Futures Together, and it also set a lot of foundations for the further cooperation to develop. Last year, we had a great meeting in Dublin, and also as we had an exhibition of visual stories opened yesterday, it was also part of the cooperation project to really look for the ways we could engage more with our audiences. And I think this is also one of the aspects that we're gonna be talking about more today. But besides that, I think what really worked very well, and we are very keen to continue in any way possible, was the Volunteers Exchange Program, where we really saw a benefit in learning by doing, by helping each other. We could really gain a deeper perspective in how open houses are working in different contexts. So each year, 5 volunteers from different cities were exchanging with each others. And we were not only like working with a group that started, but we also were growing every year. So each year we were inviting 2 new partner organizations to join our cooperation. And in 2024, we were joined by Open House Prague and Open House Barcelona. And in 2025, we welcomed Open House Rome and Open House Valencia. And as I mentioned, the audience development is a big part of also where we put our focus and where we're trying to identify the groups that we would like to reach more even. So I was already mentioning the accessibility and inclusion as a theme, but there was also a set of methods of how we could reach those different audiences. So we also, throughout those years, developed audience development toolkit for the partners. And of course, what we're gonna hear today from Tadas Šarūnas, who's gonna speak in a minute, was the audience monitoring, because I feel like as open house organizers, we usually share the stories about our built environment, but it's also really, I think, relevant to listen to the people whom we're telling those stories and to hear back from them. So I'm as much as curious to hear from Tadas as probably you are, what are actually our impact in opening these doors and telling these great stories. So thank you for your attention and looking forward to the coming presentations.
Thank you, Martynas. Thank you for this opportunity to share the results of our work. I'm Tadas Šarūnas. I'm a sociologist, interested in questions of cultural sociology, urban sociology. It happened so in my professional life that I also did quite a number of policy evaluation. So it's a specific genre of applied research. And I'm going to present some pieces of the report, which is coming at the end of this month, beginning of next, 90 pages. I will not bore you with everything, just 6 insights from this report, evaluation report, and also 2 recommendations, if I may. So with evaluation, and in fact any applied research, it's a strange genre, I would say, because you always start at something like this, like what is it? So when me and my colleague Ruta, we were starting this work, we had some experience of open house in Vilnius as a visitors, volunteers. But frankly speaking, we didn't know what it is. So and it often happens in this applied research that you have kind of clumsy understanding of the object of your research. More so about Open House Europe as a project which was only starting when we started work and only discovering itself, so to speak. So there are many different ways how to deal professionally in this kind of situations. You can put, your Ernst & Young black suit and say, where are your KPIs? Where's your efficiency? Or, apply kind of standard managerial techniques of evaluation. And in my experience of working with culture sector and also in evaluation of Kaunas 2022 European Capital of Culture, it really doesn't work. So we as sociologists, we use social theory and we try to find proper questions. So one question was obvious from the very beginning. What are the social impacts of open house festivals? It was very clear, without social impacts of individual festivals, the project itself cannot have really big social impact. So it's a foundation. It's a foundation. We need to understand every single festival. We need to understand what it's going about. And then, only then, we can speak about this format of European exchange? Did the knowledge travel around? And maybe, in a good case scenarios, also the project managed to multiply, to expand the social impacts that individual festivals and your work basically achieve. So that's basically what was guiding us. It was also some journey to arrive at these questions. As I said, you start with a bubble and like, okay, where do we start? What it is? So, but I mean, another thing with evaluations, external evaluations, in the genre requires that we give recommendations. But who I am to recommend you how to do your work? I mean, I will not implement the recommendations, you know. So it's always very kind of tricky dance of, you know, intervention. But in the evaluation community, there's belief that there is some value if there's someone who's not involved, looking, observing for some time, the initiative or the project is trying to achieve it, some kind of understanding what it is and what it could be. But to have this ability to speak, to have our own voice, we of course use other techniques. We start from the scratch, we operationalize what it is to do the festival, and we use different methods. So we started with qualitative survey of what it is to do the festival, and we ended up with your help gathering more than 18,000 entries from visitors of events across the Europe, their feedback about events, and finally wrapping up the conclusions in the form of workshops and so on. So that's basically the work we do. The result usually can be very different. It's a lot of data and insights, and you start to drown in it, and it's a matter of choice how to narrate. And I want to introduce some types of evidence that we use. We can start with this one. What it is. It's obviously a very badly designed slide with a big number. Yeah, it's a little bit on purpose, designed like that. So if you look at it a little bit more, it should hurt your eyes, you know, the heaviness of the number. That's the biggest number I'm gonna show today. It's like, there will be no bigger numbers. So, and it's also a reason to celebrate, because 86.7% of visitors rate their experience with open house festivals as good, very good, or excellent. A bit shy, I would say. A bit shy, but you really should be proud about this number. In fact, 50% of visitors say, "Wow, it's excellent." Let's think about the shyness we could see, you know, in the audience. So it's a great achievement for any like public service, let's say, with like unachievable goal, I would say. And in culture events, it's quite usual to have, you know, like a big satisfaction, and like usually our scales even burn out, you know, like to measure we need like 10 points instead of standard 7 on 5. It's like, and the problem is that for the most of your donors, that's not enough. Oh, yeah, people are satisfied. Yeah, of course. I mean, I myself, I'm in the position that it should be or could be enough. In fact, we just finished with colleagues at Vilnius University a survey which shows that how much satisfaction, subjective satisfaction with your own life belongs to access to cultural events, cultural activities. We have counted that for the person in Lithuania of the average income, participation in culture can improve satisfaction to the extent that 5,000 euros per year can improve satisfaction. So it's at the same point as an income, access to culture. It's very highly contributed to satisfaction of life. But there's a life. I mean, situation you all face, all cultural workers across Europe face, that's not enough. Where's the other social values, you know? That's the stand of most of the donors. And at this point, I want to make this transition, and I think it's important, transition from number to people. And I think we quite often overlook this transition, and we try not to do that in our report. What do I mean? And we have this problem as the social analysts, as some bureaucracies have also, in a way. We can lose, you know, the sight of the social phenomena we are trying to understand when you're trying to analyze. It's like we dissolve it somehow. I don't know how to explain this. Like, if that's a social phenomena, you know, like what we do professionally, it's like, oh, it's a bit dirty, you know. It's like, this is bigger, this is smaller, you know. Like, it's like, that's according to gender, income, like social status, occupation, and they're like, oh, look what I have done. It's like, what it is, I don't understand. Oh, like, okay, we tell a story somehow from the data, but it's an act. Like bureaucracies do, analysts do also try to understand the complex phenomena. And I think it's always when you do it, it's important to come back to the stories of people. And that's Dana. It's a very important person. She's a volunteer in one of the festivals of Open House Europe network. And these festivals, impossible without volunteers. It's like specific genre, you're very well known, it's heavy genre. It's impossible. And what we saw while researching Open House Europe, that this project really helped to mobilize. Last year it was 4,893 storytellers of architecture. It's a main human resource on which the quality of the experience stands. Most of them are not architects, not necessarily related to architecture. It's another thing we'll touch upon. But let's give voice to Dana. And I like a lot the way she speaks about festivals and what is important for her. I think one rule for all festivals is to have a great time, to meet new people and discover something new. Open house festivals have different values, but at the same time they are similar because they all bring together people who love architecture and are curious about spaces that shape our cities. Couldn't agree more. There's a hint though. Who are those people who love architecture and are curious about the spaces that shape our cities? Are they people like us? I mean, if you look right and to change your attitude, maybe almost anyone living around us is a possible audience. So what we think Open House Europe achieved is to invite you to ask these questions. Okay, children, are there the people, you know, who can enjoy architecture and like with us go to these buildings, like they are with a special work, special attention? It's a good starting point, you can say, about any other social group. We are, as humans, different, have different needs, we have different life in cities. So what Open House Europe achieved, it invited to critically assess the audience base reached. Yeah, we know it's hard to reach people, it takes a lot of effort, but it's never, you know, standard. there are variations across Europe, how it's done. As I said, not all numbers are big. The slide format doesn't change. 9.9% of visitors who strongly agree that the event was not meant for people like them. Wait, it's a good thing. It's only 10% of people say, oh, I don't belong here, maybe I will not come back. But it's a direction to look at it. Okay, who doesn't feel at place in this format? You could take another look, like you could speak about 74% who say, yes, I belong here. But it's other attitude. Okay, that's important information. 10% who say, oh, maybe it's not for me. Men, for example. In the most technical, in the festival, the most technical art form of all, like in a lot of other cultural events, men say, no, it's like, no, maybe. It's like statistically, not all men, but it's a statistical possibility to have this attitude more. So it gives this information, gives possibility to think about what you do. It doesn't necessarily direct your action, but it informs, informs your action. So still, not forget, 74.3% is people feel good there. So it's also a very good achievement, and there are also other elements of success. Element of surprise, good service. I mean, if you queue for 1 hour, there is no space for errors. I mean, if you queue for 1 hour and there are some errors on the other side of the door, so it has to be well-maintained experience to be good. So what Open House Europe also achieved, we believe, it's, in a wide sense, is bringing together European citizens who are interested in architecture and the urban environment. And there are several elements. Topic of inclusion was very successful, I would say, because it brought an understanding how do you invite, for example, blind people, and people with various disabilities. And it was bringing European values of solidarity. This idea that maybe it can be for all people. This experience which is enjoyed so much by the residents of your cities, maybe it can be for all. At this point, I need to stop a little, wrap up, and speak about one conclusion. So, yesterday we had a very nice talk about light. I enjoyed this poetic moments of the talk. When you start to analyze something, some social phenomenon, it's no longer like black hole, like sucking you in. What's that? You start to see its own light, and maybe to see kind of, it's the structure. There's something. It's like a molecular, It's meaningful. That's meaningful by itself. And with the events, I mean, this is a very nice venue, very beautiful venue. But if you think about Open House Europe events, like owners of this venue don't have challenges that festivals have. It's what it's like if your city is, all the city is your venue. It's a very challenging project. Like with 1 year, we understood, okay, it's okay, these people do quite amazing job. It's tough. It's like very simple finding, but we have to arrive to this to make statements, evaluation statements. It's like, most of you know it all. It's like finding a donor who would fund it, It's like, it's a subtle dance of trying not to fall. For most cities, especially those who are underfunded. Okay, it's after you find donor, maybe convincing 100 owners of buildings that you maybe open, okay, it's almost convinced, but then you're mobilizing 100 volunteers, you know. It's a lot of effort. And then doing communication with reaches people. So what we learned, that most of the people, 2 weeks before the festival, he has given more than they can. And here comes Open House Europe and suggests something. Let's improve it. Like, let's contribute, let's do something. It's with a goodwill. Let's, for example, comes Tadas and Ruta, let's do visitor survey. Okay. Sorry, next year. We're busy, really busy. Oh, I know a lot of suggestions which really make sense, but they are hard. For example, let's involve blind people. Okay. And this applauses are for all Open House Europe cities who made an extra step, because we learned through these years it's a hard event. It's really hard to make an extra step, and really you should be proud about that. I mean, I'm a guy from outside. Who I am to say what you should do or not should do? But I have to recommend something. So I do recommend for the future. The direction is responding to a specific situation of the specific festival. We found it that we call it Open House Europe. It's a community of practice. It's also a community of care. It's not like, oh, we push you, you turn. No, it's like, we will have you, we will be next to you, we will help you, if you choose so to do it. So this care element is quite visible, the way you treat each other, because you know that it's hard to do the event. And the most beautiful exchanges are one-on-one. I don't know how to do it, but there's some professional like me who did it already. And I can ask. And this person cares because he or she knows. So that's the direction to go one-on-one, respond to situations, because situations, the format is one, but situations that festivals functioning very different. But let's go to I think, even more impressive stuff that you have achieved. Last slide of this type, because it's really on the purpose. Bad design, not designed for the audience, you know, like you. 64.8% of visitors strongly agreeing that open house event was informative. Wait a moment, it's not even a good entertainment, so people leave knowing something after it, you know, learning something. It's not necessarily a rule. So you'll have another in the report, numbers of similar type, which also show people after the event or during the event start to think about the city they live in. More so, they start to belong, start to feel that they are part of the city. A bit slightly, to the slight extent, they start to understand what is professional architect, what these people actually do, this kind of exotic people, you know, what they do, what their struggles. So that's a very powerful tool to go further. And once again, it's not self-evident to go that direction because funding is from different sources and it can lead to different sub-formats of the event. But what Open House Europe did, it invited to commit to democratization of architecture, to this idea that, like this house in Žvėrynas, the owner of this house, some well-off introvert person, he says like, I achieved something with building. I'm a private person, but I will open up to show for the people that if it's valuable. So maybe it's for everyone to understand architecture, not only for the professionals. It can be pushed even further. It's not only maybe about understanding, as in the words of one of your colleagues, I think sometimes ordinary people are afraid to get into to participate into this dialogue. Some projects may be bad for the city, but people are afraid to say so because they are afraid that they are just common people. But if they know these stories, they become more empowered. They feel safer and can advocate for good places, good spaces, and demand them from the authorities. So that's already a political statement, not only teaching what architecture is, but empowering, inviting for action. And we heard in the presentations before, it's relevant as never, this empowerment and participation. We kind of add the conclusion that architecture affects everyone. So in democratic societies, everyone has a possibility to have its own voice, a unique, informed voice about urban environment. So, to my understanding, Open House Europe was gently encouraging, not like really pushing, but gently encouraging, especially through themes like that, quite provocative themes, to engage with the politics of space. And I think that's something, it's already beyond what it's Open House Europe, Open House format about. It's not only just telling this story, but empowering the citizens. I want to go to the end of this presentation with the words of one architect, person we talked about. It's one of most important events for me and a big part of the community. I have a joke that in our office, there are two big events a year. One is Christmas and another is Open House. That says a lot. Yeah, of course, it gives me joy. Maybe because of the opportunity to have this dialogue with people and to get to know our city better. I also enjoy how there are a lot of non-architects involved in the event. What is very, very specific, I would say, in the European context about these events and your initiative, it brings architects together with people. It solidifies solidarity of the profession, but in a bit nuanced, importantly nuanced way, through the contact with the citizens of the city. You can feel the worth of your profession, feel your strength, and achieve more. That's the way Laura feels. She's an architect in Vilnius. And I think that Open House Europe was strengthening solidarity within the architectural profession because putting this field that open houses bring to a European level alone, it has a symbolic value for people working in this profession. I feel like I burned a lot of time of your time and I have to wrap up. And I want to wrap up with the last recommendation. I mean, again, should or could, that's your choice. That's your achievement, so to speak. But it feels that Open House Europe really could develop its activities on the basis of these unique social values that it has managed to create. That it needs bold decisions how to make the next step. And I invite you to discuss them in between and after that. Of course, as I said, I'm just a someone from outside, I don't have to implement anything. So it's a comfortable position. And we can wipe these words down. We can just, look abstractly at what you have achieved, the connections you made. It's beautiful. It's meaningful. Even if it's temporary, it has value. I want to thank you, because I know it will not never be said enough. I want to thank you for your work in individual cities. And also thank you for the opportunity to observe your work through these 2 years. That's it from me.
Okay, while we get my presentation up, I'm Tania. I'm the Executive Director and Chief Curator at Open House Melbourne. I'm also an architect, a researcher and a writer, as Manager mentioned before, and I have a PhD focused on the public communication of architecture and the built environment. So I literally have the only job in Melbourne outside of academia that is utilising my PhD. So I feel very, very privileged to work where I do and work with the people I work with, and to have these fantastic international colleagues. I think I can put this down now and speak into the other things. There we go. Hello. I'd just like to start though by acknowledging that Open House Melbourne's programming exists on what always was and always will be the land of the people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to all First Nations people across the globe. Sovereignty in Australia has never been ceded, and we're mindful of this in everything we do at Open House Melbourne, given our focus on the modern built environment. And to give you a little bit of context to why I say this, is that in Victoria we are moving to, I lie. In December we signed a treaty, our state government signed a treaty with our First Nations people. It's been a long time coming, but we've moved through truth-telling and treaty, and we're working towards reconciliation. Our First Nations people have been disenfranchised for quite a long time. Just to give you a little overview of Open House Melbourne, since 2008 we've facilitated over 1.8 million visitors to over 1,000 sites across Melbourne and regional Victoria. We're an independent and a trusted and a much loved not-for-profit organisation. We work, like you all, to build a public understanding of the positive impact of good design in order to inspire people to explore, celebrate and care for their neighbourhoods, their suburbs, their cities, their towns and their regions. And this is really important. This is a really crucial part of our work. We connect people to place, informing and empowering them to play an active role in shaping their buildings, places and communities. And it's really lovely to be able to say that to you all after the presentation we've just seen. So last year we accrued over 87,000 engagements with our programming. To give you a little bit of an understanding of our context, this is Australia and New Zealand. In Australia and New Zealand, there are 6 annual open house type organisations, so not all of them are members of the Open House Worldwide Network. Perth, this little one you can see way out here on the west, that happens every now and then, so I didn't quite count them, but they're hoping to come back on board again. Brisbane Open House Hobart and Sunshine Coast Open House are all Open House Worldwide members along with us. Open House Hobart and the Sunshine Coast Open House are affiliated with the Australian Institute of Architects, but we at Open House Melbourne are an independent not-for-profit. So our attendance this year for our festival was almost 70,000 online and in-person visits across 190 program listings. Brisbane Open House, we think, is the next largest festival with 42,000 visits across 91 sites. Hobart was still counting their visits, so I'm not quite sure where they sit yet, but hopefully I'll find out by the time I get back home. And Open Christchurch, over there in New Zealand, our lovely neighbours, they're gorgeous. We went to visit them earlier this year. Recorded almost 12,000 visits across 55 program listings. We're the only open house in the region to deliver significant year-round programming. So this is Melbourne, or NAM, as our First Nations friends called it. It was colonised by settlers in 1835, and it's one of the great multicultural cities of the world. To give you a bit of an understanding of that, my mother is Chinese Malaysian, my husband's family comes from Italy, we were just in the Valtellina Valley where they're from. This is a very typical situation for an Australian. It also must be acknowledged that our First Nations heritage extends for 65,000 years at least prior to colonisation. To give you a rough indication of the size of Melbourne, this is its kind of metropolitan area. It's quite large, and we are the largest urban area in Australia with 5.2 million people, and we beat Sydney. There's not much rivalry there at all, but yes, we beat Sydney. We are one of the least densely populated cities in the world, which is a serious problem, and an issue we are really interested in. For context, that's Liechtenstein. It fits right inside the bay. We run a year-round program anchored by our weekend festival. The program listings for our weekend festival are sourced through an open expression of interest process, and every year we choose a theme that is broad enough to allow for many different types of people to engage with our program. We're really interested in anything that makes a contribution to making Melbourne, Melbourne. At Open House Melbourne, we often speak about how our programming connects people to place, and the 2025 theme, Stories of the City, made that connection tangible. Our weekend truly embodies the idea of an open house. Melbourne throws open its doors with warmth, generosity and pride to welcome people into the buildings, places and spaces that make our city unique. And it was the first time, the 2025 festival was the first festival since COVID where we truly felt the strength of our community return. We were the most locked down city in the world, and that broke a lot of things, and we're suffering a little bit from a COVID hangover, but 2025 was fantastic. What's been really beautiful to see here across the past few days is the different colours and flavours and personalities of all of your different open house events. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of a taste of ours. As mentioned before, almost 70,000 in-person and online visits across 190 program listings. That meant that there were over 1,000 individual tours, talks, workshops, performances and exhibitions on our program over 3 days. We do a Friday, Saturday and a Sunday. And there's an estimated 2.4 million in economic impact to the city within that, Australian dollars of course, not quite so much in euros. We do a little bit of our own programming around the weekend. We do a Designing with Country talk, which is a First Nations focus, and it's part of our commitment to reconciliation. We do a Stroll the City, last year already. We did a Stroll the City walking tour, and you can look at them on our website, and they're kind of audio tours of our city. You can listen to them like a podcast, or you can wander around with them in your ears. The Bates Smart Gallery, Bates Smart is the oldest architectural firm in Melbourne. It's been there almost since the beginning. Almost every street you walk down in Melbourne has a Bates Smart affiliated building on it. Their gallery popped up Stories of the City, and you could write your stories in, the public could write their stories in and see them on the wall there, which was really beautiful. Every year we run 2 programs that relate to, I suppose, we work with the Heritage Council of Victoria. One of them's called Modern Melbourne, which is a small documentary series that's also on our website of key figures that have influenced the shape and the design of Melbourne. And the Heritage Address is usually kind of, not necessarily an architect, but a key figure in Melbourne and Victoria talking about what heritage means to them. Last year, we also implemented an access map. We worked with some partners, and it featured sites on our program that are not only mobility but also neurodiversity friendly, and we're hoping to expand on that program again this year. We pretty much have everything on our program, from huge new infrastructure projects such as the Metro Tunnel train stations. This is Anzac Station. 1,600 visitors got to look inside this station before it opened this year, and it was fully booked out and everybody loved it. We also do landscapes. This is the Paran Skate Park. They had a Paris Olympic head skateboarder judge guy taking lessons. I think that might be him on the skateboard there this year, and it was really wonderful. We love housing of all types. shapes and types. We often have award-winning housing, but I'm personally really committed to looking at social and affordable housing on our program. And this is a really fantastic example of a new project that's gone up in Melbourne recently, social housing. We love innovative housing. This is actually quite an old project now. It's 15 years old. But it's a series of 10 townhouses that were built on a remediated site, and a group of kind of architects and planners got together to develop these houses, and they turned the remediated tip, the garbage dump, into not only housing, but they gave back to the community with the form of this public park, which is beautiful. We're incredibly committed to sustainability. This is the Port Phillip Eco Centre, which people got to look behind the scenes at while it was under construction. And the other one is Eco One, which is a set of passive house, which is probably not so unusual for you here in Europe, but it's quite unusual in Australia. A set of passive house townhouses. There's some beautiful community projects every year on our program. This is a project by Kennedy Nolan, which is a new community precinct. You can hire venues here. It also has a First Nations gallery. It covers maternal health, and also it's really close to the Brunswick bars, which you can see in the photograph here. If any of you have been to Melbourne, you know that Melburnians love sport and they love art. This year we had the mission, last year, I'm going to keep saying this year. We had the Mission Whitten Oval on our program. This is the home of the Australian rules football team, the Western Bulldogs. And really, this form of football is the only form of football. I know that's controversial to say in this crowd, but if you haven't seen it, you should give it a crack. It is excellent and very fast-paced and quite odd. As mentioned before, Melbourne also loves art. We had a whole array of street art studios on the program this year, and if you've ever seen a whole pile of like really cool street artists vacuuming before the open house crowd turn up at their doorstep, it was just wonderful to see how seriously they took it and how much they love to participate. We always have some fantastic heritage sites. This is an old convent that's had numerous contemporary interventions into it by a whole pile of really fantastic Melbourne architects. The other thing that we all know that we love to do is to take people behind the scenes. This project is a project called Fed Square. On the weekend you can walk under it, you can walk between its walls. It's built over a railway, so you can walk between the train lines and the street underneath these beautiful buildings. It's really interesting, this one, because it's one of the youngest heritage listed buildings in Australia, and I'm quite proud to say that in a previous life I led the community campaign to save the building over there on the, what's that side, the right, from being replaced by an Apple store in 2019. So today it's now heritage listed and it remains our town square, which is very, very fantastic. Our program not only deals with humans, but it deals with the more than human. This is the Werribee Zoo. It's the elephant enclosure. It's been newly designed. The elephants were moved in last year. A beautiful fun fact is we have the Melbourne Arts Precinct on our program. They're getting a fantastic new arts building. The building that was on the site prior to this building, which is starting to be constructed now, was demolished very carefully. 97% of it was recycled, and the wires for the elevator cables form part of the enclosure for the Werribee Zoo. And these projects are about an hour's drive apart in Melbourne, so that's quite interesting. We always have a huge amount of returning favourites: Government House, the ABC radio studios, or the ABC studios, which is like our equivalent to the BBC. And as you might have gotten a little feel from the vibe of the projects I've been showing you, Melbourne is one of the last bastions of postmodernism in the world. We're still making it and we still love it. In terms of our year-round programming, if we think about our festival, I keep pressing both buttons at once. The festival is really about a celebration of experience. It's really broad and inclusive for us. But our curated year-round programming is critical and thought-provoking, and it's a deeper dive. We take a deeper dive. We curate it ourselves and take a deeper dive into critical issues that are facing Melbourne and our state of Victoria. We program our year-round programming, or even within the weekend, around 5 program pillars: designing with country, which explores First Peoples knowledge and culture; open nature, which looks at design, ecology and the natural world in relation to the urban environment; making home, which unpacks social, affordable and innovative housing; the collective city, which looks at how we make the city together; and cultivating design, which nurtures knowledge to build better design outcomes. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of some of these. This is a project, a talk that we did about 2 hours to the west of Melbourne. It looked at the cultural visitor infrastructure for the Budgebim cultural landscape. We had Uncle Dennis Rose and the architect Bianca Scaife talking about how Gunditj Mara, which is the First Nations clan that's in that part of the world, worked with the landscape, with the architect to deliver an incredible visitor experience. This is one of the oldest aquaculture sites in the world. It is over 6,600 years old, and the oral history of the First Nations people in this area go back 37,000 years. They have stories about the volcano exploding there, which is, the volcano is called Budgebim. So it's incredible. If you get a chance to go, mind-blowing. Yeah, cool, no worries. Open nature, we're delivering a landscape architecture design competition this year for that, and we're taking people on a tour. While this site looks incredibly wild now, development is encroaching on it, and we want people to understand what that will mean for this incredible grasslands, and important grasslands that's there. Our Making Home program, this year we delivered 5 tours of community housing, which is really fantastic. The Victorian government's finally put a bit more money into social housing, a lot more money, and we're starting to see those projects realised. So we tour people through these projects to help them understand why it's really important to house people at risk of homelessness, and the kind of the complexity it takes to deliver it, and the key role that design can play in it. We ran a program for a couple of years called Design and Death, 6 Feet Under, and basically it looked at exactly that, design and death. So the future of the cemetery, memorialisation and planning, the role that design can play in the design at the end of life for palliative care spaces. Our Cultivating Design program, we're starting to look more at educational programs. It's not a slide of this, but it's just to say we want to deliver professional development and local government council design education tours. And in addition to that, in 2026, we will be delivering an extra festival. So there'll be another one, Open House Latrobe, which is out to the west of Melbourne. It will be a regional festival. So finally, back to Open House Australia, New Zealand. We're currently in contact with all of the open houses in our region, and we're exploring the idea of an Open House Australia New Zealand with the Australian Institute of Architects. The future vision, I suppose, for this is a little bit different to Open House Europe. I mean, we were born, the talks around this were born out of kind of like a post-COVID economic environment, so everybody's really tight for resources. And we see it as a primarily operational network based on sharing resources and reducing costs across organisations. But we do see the opportunity also with this to explore centralising operational costs, particular staffing roles, fundraising at a national level, and knowledge sharing and expertise. So in terms of that, where we're at, the process is slow and we need to fund an extra staff member. But we've made strong connections and during the exploration phase, which we want to build on into the future, and it's really wonderful to come here and see how it's worked here and to learn from you all, because we know that we are stronger together. Anyway, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for all of your energy and your time to come here today and share with us a little bit of a reflection, I think, as well, internally for the Open House Worldwide Network. It's been fantastic to see the tremendous success and the incredible learning of all of the cities that have been taking part in the Open House Europe Summit and programme. I've been very fortunate to join all 3 of these summits, and it's fantastic to be here. So thank you so much for that. I wanted to share with you a few ideas and tell you a little story to start. So I think it's fair to say that a city without people would lose its meaning. And most cities, however, are created in ways that exclude the people that live there in the processes of design and construction and the management of projects. Okay, I'd just like to, but thank you so much. And open cities, or maybe I'd put it down. Open House festivals in cities around the world offer a unique opportunity for anyone to access and understand how others live, learn, work and play. It brings together people from all backgrounds, ages and levels of education. And in extraordinary moments where doors are open to the curious and our shared built environments become the focus of attention. So, who am I? Why am I here? You see a familiar face up there of a much younger version of me. My name's Robert Newcombe. I'm from London originally, but I'm representing here Santiago, Chile. About 10 years ago, I started to visit Santiago, and now I live there. And together with some very special people, we started the festival. But here I am, a younger version of me, taking part in a young people's program that was run by Open City. And this was called My City Too. And it was a tremendous opportunity for me as a young person, as a citizen, to have a space to develop one's sense of self, one's sense of participation, a sense of activism, citizenship, where once a month we would go on a Saturday to visit amazing places, be with these actors of change, architects, designers and so on, and get involved in building advocacy as a young person. And here you can see Victoria Thornton, who was the original founder of the Open House Festival in London in 1992, and was the key instigator of the Open House worldwide movement, with the idea to take this festival that she started in London and figure out a way where it could expand to other cities without compromising the basic principles of it being free for all and trying to put design and the quality of design at the center of the conversation. And for me, I'm quite biased about Open House because it's been quite a significant influence in my life. I met my wife at an Open House party and a launch event, and I run the Open House in Santiago with my wife and many other people. So there's a really interesting ways that a festival which is all about buildings can actually become transformative about people's lives and how people understand their cities and the places that they live. Something I'm very keen about thinking, what is the purpose of connecting with all these different cities that have all sorts of different situations and problems. Ultimately, every city is unique. And within that, I think there's a genuine opportunity to collide and collaborate and exchange in order to innovate and create different ways to respond to these situations and ultimately lead to ways we can have impact that really connects to the local requirements. Every festival is adapted to these local conditions, but also perhaps there's a way we can organize ourselves to have a global impact, or better understand what is our global impact. In Santiago, we try, for example, to focus on as many different areas as possible. The city is within an area, a regional area called the Región Metropolitana, metropolitan region, and there are 52 boroughs. We're talking about an area that is 160 kilometers wide, so significant distances. And we try and make sure that in every single of these 52 boroughs, there is at least one space that opens. This idea of territorial equity, or seeing ways that there's value in every single area that we can really share and understand. And also, what's interesting is to not just think of the city in isolation, but to consider the rural areas around the capital that live in the shadow of this big city. And so with Open House Worldwide, there's been a really interesting development over time. Cities have been organically appearing where usually it's some sort of non-governmental organization that a small group of people decide they've had experience that's been amazing in a festival and they want to share it with their city, bring it there and develop it. And usually these festivals that start are incredibly complex. As we've heard, they're incredibly difficult to achieve and to improve upon. But there's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of passion. And actually, there are big questions about how can cities that run these festivals develop longer-term survival, but also flourish over time. And in that sense, from when Victoria has started the Open House network till now, we've had about roughly 15 years. And it's been very successful in exporting and expanding. But at the same time, there's an interesting opportunity to consider where can we go next? How can we consolidate this worldwide network? So it's been absolutely fantastic that the Open House Europe initiative has been successful. There's been a lot of learning and a big journey taken by the cities. And it would be fantastic to discover what we can do to think globally now and share and exchange all of this learning to bring it forward. And it's interesting, this idea of being a global network where everyone or a significant amount of the festivals have very severe funding restrictions. And the idea is how can we find ways to overcome this limit and to secure this collaboration. Yes. And so what I've been involved with as a personal level, trying to support the Open House Worldwide initiative, is to run workshops where we exchange knowledge and inviting cities to share some expertise they may have and to ultimately inspire a dialogue and a conversation. And here in person, it's transformative how coming together from all these different backgrounds and contexts really make it possible to accelerate our thinking, our innovation, and how we can really transform to improve the impact and also not waste time repeating mistakes that we've made in the past and being more effective. And I just wanted to conclude that it's very important to see how we can go forward in this journey and perhaps as a global network really search out for what are the big questions we want to ask as a global network. And it's been fantastic to hear, and these last points just to conclude. It's fantastic to hear, for example, Open House Australia and New Zealand, Open House Italy, Open House Switzerland. There are lots of different scales for collaboration. And it'll be fascinating to see how over time we'll be able to, at different scales of collaboration, really get the most out of that. But at the end of the day, the most important has always been the city and the local, but the opportunity to weave together these local experiences at a global scale is a fantastic opportunity to really see how architecture ultimately is part of a global conversation, no matter where you are. And we have a fantastic opportunity to make sure that citizens are a direct part of this dialogue and discussion, and hopefully to promote an even better result into the future. So thank you.
Well, maybe to start, just to say thank you so much for such an amazing set of presentations that were both fascinating and at times acrobatic. It was really, really engaging, and I think the sequence of presentations was actually really great because I think maybe I'm conscious of time, so I'm gonna only be able to ask you 2 of the 25 questions that came into my head. But hopefully there'll be more time afterwards for us to discuss this further. But maybe to pick up from where Robert left off, you were talking a lot about, kind of more regional, like agglomerations of cities in an attempt to structure the network that's come out of the Open House Europe project that Martynas started us off with. But I was just curious to think about how, as the network continues to grow, what are other ways we could think about connecting the 60 cities and counting. So regional is just one way. I know, Robert, you've been looking at language as another way, but I was wondering if each of you, from your experience, and especially, I think, Tadas, after having done such an incredible piece of work evaluating 16 of those cities, and I guess what defines them as both different and connected. I think it'd be really interesting to think about what are ways, as we move forward, we could think of ways to maybe dissolve geographic boundaries and actually build more opportunities for cooperation. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, maybe I can start. It was interesting because on Friday, before the public program, we also had internal program where with all of the members, we were doing a little exercise. We were kind of looking at all the project elements and basically evaluating them. And as unfortunately we don't have the finances to continue our work in the full capacity, we were raising a question: would you be interested in continuing? And it was very happy to hear that out of the eight elements, 7 of them seemed to be like people were willing to continue in one or another way. So I think definitely to think about the operational structure, how it could be done, it's another task, but this willingness and maybe the idea that we can do something together, because I think before, like we started Open House Europe, there were already some talks about the volunteers exchange program, but like it wasn't tried. And now once we have this model, I hear that Brno, Vienna and Zagreb, they're doing exchange even beyond the Open House Europe framework. So I think everything is basically possible. We just need to have a certain like willingness and commitment to do this.
Maybe, Robert, you want to talk about the language experiments you've been
Yes,
doing, but also other ideas you might have?
No, fantastic, thank you. It's been very curious to think about what ways you can actually bring together people from so many different places. And one thing that we were experimenting with is how can you use language to connect people. And English has been the default language of exchange in the festival for many reasons. But we have an interesting phenomenon where 15 of the 60 cities are Spanish-speaking. So as I have this double side of speaking English and Spanish, I thought perhaps it would be fantastic to create that space. And we've had one session already, and we're going to continue to have more sessions in Spanish. And there's always this issue about the more you create smaller groups, you risk dividing or separating. But actually, I think we're still in a kind of perhaps embryonic stage of where we are achieving genuine borderless collaboration in a very natural and fluid way. I think we're still trying to learn how that can become a reality, and perhaps trying slightly smaller scale connections, but still bigger than just one-to-one, great opportunities. And just one last thing that I think there's a lot of potential, especially when you meet people in person and you get to know them, and it's not just a Zoom call that starts and then it's 30 minutes and that's it. But meeting people creates the opportunity to create cultural connections. And actually there's so many things that people from different countries and different cities share in common, and so many contrasts as well. And I think just having the capacity and the opportunity to meet and get to know people and build these personal relationships really create opportunities for collaboration.
Thanks. I mean, Tania, actually, I'd love to pick up on what you said at the beginning of your presentation about the reconciliation between First Nation people and settlers that came afterwards. And I think that as a kind of model of cooperation, looking at reconciliation as a theme, I thought was really fascinating. But you might want to share something else entirely. But
Okay. I found the button just after you passed it over. I think, just to pick up on, just go back slightly, I think this idea of camaraderie is really interesting. I've been in the role in Melbourne for almost 2 years, but our cities are quite dispersed and they're quite isolated. So we went to visit Open Christchurch, earlier this last year, and it was so great to make those connections. So I think, you know, when we go back, like we've had some people visit our festival, actually from here as well, but from Brisbane Open House, and so to get people in that same room is really interesting. And to kind of like then maybe broaden out into that theme of reconciliation, it's been a really interesting journey that Victoria, our state, has been on. And what I think a lot of us have learned in the architectural and design community is we need to have more empathy, we need to build better relationships, and we need to learn to listen. And so I think they seem like different things, to be being here and to be dealing with reconciliation. But I think they're things that I've been hearing in the room around why our program, why the work we do is really important, because it builds those bridges. And reconciliation is, in a lot of ways, about building relationships. So.
Definitely, and I think the point that you made as your first recommendation was that going forward we need to celebrate diversity and difference. And it's maybe something that we always think to collaborate, we need to find what we have in common, but actually it's maybe about celebrating what we do differently. That's really crucial, and it has been the strength of the network. So Tadas, maybe to ask you how to build on that.
Yes, basically I see it like that. It's one way to think about the format, what format brings, and to what kind of challenges it puts people on. They are very different, you know, in different contexts. So this very clear direction, and Open House Europe achieved some steps towards it. It's clustering, you know, the situations, making visible, okay, your situation, maybe it's not in a way, maybe even unique, or maybe can be approached differently. So this visibility of how to treat the format, how to do it. It might seem as a technical thing, but that's a community of practice. You do one format. That's why, you know, project was successful. It's very clear what you do. You know, it starts from the day one. It's not always the fact in European project, by the way. So that's one way. But another thing is context, including political context, economical context. And I think it's also maybe possibly good idea to think out of the box, even out of the format of open house event, because, you know, we have heard today about policy agendas of European Union. You know, like we have a very big policy agenda of preparing for war. It hurts culture sector and cultural funding, you know. So it affects the way we act, and we need to be sensitive about that, because a lot of things cannot be achieved without public funding.
I mean, perfect segue to my second question. I couldn't have planned it better myself, which is really about funding. I think funding was the tipping point when you went from standing on stage to falling on your back. So, and I think everyone in the room who's organized an open house festival feels that viscerally, because funding is always the biggest challenge. I mean, I think a lot of cities, I think maybe Europe is a different scenario where there is still support from the public sector, whereas in lots of places the reliance on the private sector or on individual and philanthropic organizations is huge. And I think a lot of our festivals beyond Europe wouldn't exist without that. And so it's about, I guess I was really curious, especially at this moment where we're trying to think, how do we learn from the project that was Open House Europe, but also build like kind of new networks of collaboration and support, and extend these resources that you've developed, like volunteer exchange, et cetera, or annual summits. I'm just wondering, like, what ways can we innovate to make a case for funding? Because everyone sees culture as something nice to have and not urgent, but culture connects people. Culture maybe removes the need for war in a way that it makes us realize what we have in common. So I think to throw it out to all of you to maybe think about what you have in mind in terms of ways we can make a case for what we do as not just a nice festival, but a really important social and political act.
I think a point was made in an earlier panel that the work we do, I think she was talking about architecture, but I feel like the work we do promotes social cohesion. And I think the world, especially from where we're sitting at the moment, and I would imagine even more so here, feels incredibly divided at the moment. Like there are forces that are almost madly divisive. And our theme for this year, based on that and being in that context, is the generous city. So we're looking at the way the city gives more than it takes, gives back more than it takes. And it's really kind of grounded in the open house premise that we bring people together to celebrate something we're passionate about. And I thought, Tadas, that was really present in your presentation, you know, like we bring, in a world that is very divided, we bring people together to discuss and to talk about complex issues in ways that are welcoming, warm and inviting. And I think that is the power of what we do. And I absolutely agree with your recommendation. We should capitalise on it.
No, good, thank you. Absolutely, we need to somehow find a way where we're able to tell a story, and tell a story that really connects with anyone who wants to hear it, but in a way give potential funders, but also the communities and the citizens and the people that engage with the project a reason to really understand what value it generates. And value can be associated with economic value, cultural, social, but there's something about building a bigger sense of community. In a sense, a city is a fiction, it's an imagination, it's an idea, and how we choose to understand it, how we choose to live in it. There are lots of variables and lots of challenges, but being very clear and as organisers of festivals and perhaps as coordinators as we move forward and organise ourselves at a global level, talking about a global question, perhaps there's ways we can really demonstrate the value that we have and make sure that people hear what they want to hear, in the sense that value will mean things, very different things for different people. However, it's very important that we're able to communicate that.
I think it's also important to reflect the power structures, which, you know, architecture, building, it's very related to power, you know, power to build is strong power, you know. So, and whenever you kind of hear at the moment and understand what's changing in your society, you then have to think about how to narrate your impact. And I mean, there are so many ways to narrate the impact. It's an incredible event, you know. So twisting and turning, being smart about it. So that's also the way.
Yeah, the question was more about the finances, but actually it made me think about, in general, how we make things, and sometimes, and this is also the case usually of the open houses, things are being done with a lot of help of volunteers. And this is enormous labor that is being put with such a joy. And I think sometimes it's also forgotten how it is important part of the festival, of this involvement. And yeah, kind of a thinking about extreme situations. I think these networks of volunteers and the capacity of Open House to bring these networks will be always very crucial.
I just want to add one point, actually, because you brought me back to finances. I think research is incredibly important. So the research you've done, like it's so impressive and it's so important. And our next step is to go to the federal government to look for funding. And we will be attaching your report. So, you know, because it's applicable. Yeah. It's absolutely applicable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that notion that cities are fictions, I think they're collectively written. And I think to do something at the scale of Europe or at the scale of like a global movement is really incredible. And I think the fact that this is a grassroots movement, it is powered by people, is truly unique and really incredible. And I think it's that in that way that hopefully we can advocate for greater amount of support and all the different forms that takes, not just funding, but through people's time and involvement and the care. As you said, we can't thank people enough for making every single festival possible. So yeah, I'm conscious that we don't have enough time to have the bigger conversation, but hopefully it's given our audience I guess, food for thought to approach any of our speakers later and ask them some questions. Maybe to close, there's a quote by urban activist Jane Jacobs that I often think about. she said that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they're created by everybody. And I think Open House Festival makes huge strides to kind of actually allow people. I think there was a quote in your presentation that really struck a chord with me to say that, like, you don't have to be an architect or an urban planner. Your voice matters. You can shape your city. So yeah, I really like this idea that we get to write this fiction together. So thank you all so much. Thank you everyone for attending. We're going to actually have a short break after this before our keynote speaker. So please go out and get a drink and come back after in, I think, about 15 minutes. But for now, please join me in thanking our amazing panel.